I mean, these foods that are highly palatable, right? It's typically high sugar or high salt or, high in fat. Those things, they are really palatable. Number one, I will say that usually these foods are going to be much more exciting and, we'll be much more impulsive around them if we haven't eaten adequately. So, number one, I want to make sure that, if you're finding that you can't keep it in the house, have you eaten? Because sometimes our brains biologically push us towards eating more foods. And if there's something in the house that you are going to think of because you know that you have Cheetos in the house, for example, you know that they're there, you're going to be more likely to go, gravitate towards that food that you're really excited about. And you'll be less likely to stop eating that food if you haven't eaten enough. Now, I know Cheetos are not filling. It's not the most filling food. You could probably eat a full meal and then have a full bag of Cheetos as well. But like I said before, it sometimes comes down to the making peace with food part. So these foods feel more quote unquote addictive when we haven't made peace with them. Like if you feel really bad for eating those Cheetos, or you usually can't have sugar in the house, it could be because it's so exciting when you do get to have it, or there's a lot of guilt and shame tied to it, right? There's an emotional charge with it. So it makes the reward value of that food even larger. Now, when it comes to the addictive piece, there's been a lot of studies that show, yes, these highly palatable foods do create more of a reward in our ADHD reward center. Excuse me, I can't speak. And so it can create that feeling of like, yes, you're getting more dopamine from it, and so you want more and more and more. But that doesn't mean that we just have to accept that and let it be that way. I think also it's really important to know that the studies that claim that food is addictive actually have showed the opposite. So if you look at all the studies in mice, for example, when they said that they were addicted to sugar, the biggest indicator of them having those addictive behaviors when they would continuously go back to the sugar and consume it in large amounts and like have these binge eating tendencies, it was because they had less access to it. They were restricted to it. And in order for the mice to actually take part in the study, they were restricted first. So they were hungry. They didn't give them regular access. It was new and exciting. It was like, oh, they don't know when they're going to get to have it again. So they consumed all of it. So I will say, in terms of the palatability, if you have made peace with food or you're like, no, that's not really what it is, it's okay to, maybe limit it once in a while. But the more you restrict and the more you keep it out of your house, the more exciting it is going to be to you. So it takes some time, I would say, maybe to go through that with a coach if you're worried about it. I've helped lots of people kind of get over their fear of addictions with certain foods by going through this process. It is individualized, though. I hope that answers your question.
That was so fascinating. No, thank you for going into that detail. That was really helpful. And it leads to another common question that we got today. And that is exactly as you were saying, like, to fill yourself with other foods, so that also you are not sort of binging on the Cheetos, or as someone said, the Girl Scout cookies. A lot of people here today say they just don't feel hungry during the day. They get hyper focused and they forget to eat. Or this is very common with the parents here today, that their children insist they are not hungry all day long. And then you know what happens with that at the end of the day. Can you recommend, would it be a good idea to set a schedule, at least at the outset, to get yourself in the habit of checking in and even, I want to say forcing yourself, but making, questioning yourself. Maybe I should be hungry. I haven't eaten and it's 2:00 in the afternoon. What can we do to kind of challenge that when our instincts are telling us we're not hungry, but we really should be?
Yes, absolutely. And I want to say I am here with you. I have a 3-year-old who just asked me for ice cream for breakfast this morning. So I understand. It's because it is what it is. It's the interoceptive piece that I was talking about. So we lack that ability to sort of feel what's happening in our body. That includes emotional regulation. It includes things like, just feeling what's happening. What do you need? How do you need to get your needs met? So the hyper focus, the stress sometimes that is triggered when we're in those moments, that can sort of decrease it even more. It sort of shuts off the ability to feel that. And so, yes, I think eating on a schedule can be helpful. And so that's where, we say with intuitive eating, it's based on your hunger cues and your fullness cues. But if you are somebody who doesn't feel those, especially, whether you have ADHD or you have a history of eating disorders and your body sort of goes offline, yes, it is important to eat on a regular schedule. And that's to actually bring those hunger cues back online to let your body know, yes, you have regular access to food. And you'll start to notice that you might start to feel some of your hunger cues again. So, with the kiddos, especially, it's important to just offer regularly and continuing to offer and give a variety of foods. They need to just see that it's available and that they have regular meals on a regular schedule. And I know it's tough when they don't eat it and it goes to waste. But all we can do is really continue to offer. And one of the things that I do with my daughter and some of my clients is just to say, hey, that sugar craving that you're having right now, that ice cream that you're really craving, that's because you haven't eaten all night. And your brain is telling you that you need something quick. You need quick energy. So ice cream sounds really good right now because your body needs some energy. And so even though ice cream is what you want in the moment, that might not make you feel very good. It might not give you the long lasting energy that you need. How about we have something else? I will say maybe ice cream's not on the menu, but how about we have something else that's, a little bit sweet that you really enjoy, and we'll pair it with something that's going to give you long lasting energy too. So, removing the language of good versus bad is really helpful because we don't want kids to grow up thinking that there are good versus bad foods, because then when they eat those foods, they associate them with being good or bad. Same thing that we do as adults. And so that's where the guilt and the shame comes in, that spiral kicks in. So removing the guilt and the shame from the language, continuously offering. You can absolutely eat on a schedule if that's what you need. Some people really have a hard time with that interoception. Even myself, as somebody who's an intuitive eating counselor, I'm a dietitian, and I do this stuff every day. If I'm doing a project where I'm, hyper focused for hours, I still need to set an alarm. It's just the nature of our bodies sometimes, right? So you can be really good at it, but we still need to remember, like, oh yeah, I've been so focused on getting this done that I've forgotten my needs. So getting those needs met is so important. And yes, absolutely, scheduling, you can do that.
Okay, so helpful. On the flip side of that same coin, you had talked about practicing sort of checking in with yourself during meal times on your fullness cues. And people are wondering, what does that actually look like? How do we do this in the midst of a meal to make sure that we are stopping at an appropriate time?
Yeah. So it takes some time, or a little bit more dedication in the beginning if you really want to do that, because we do need to be stopping and being more intentional about it. So that could mean at the beginning of the meal, just sort of checking in and saying, okay, what's my hunger level right now? Am I just a little bit hungry? Am I really hungry? Or maybe you just don't know. You're sort of neutral. But once you start eating, you can start to pay attention to the taste and the textures and the smells of the food, and sort of try to immerse yourself in it a little bit, just to make sure that your focus is actually staying on the food rather than everything around you. So to be more intentional with it, almost like a grounding exercise for the experience of eating. And then towards the middle of the meal, let's say however much you have on your plate, you can say, okay, how am I feeling now? Am I starting to feel full? Are thoughts of food starting to decrease a little bit? Is my stomach starting to feel a little bit more full? Am I starting to feel a little bit more calm? Do I feel energized? How do I feel in my body right now? And this is going to feel different based on, the day, the type of food that you're eating, your exercise levels, all of that. And then again, towards the end, once your plate is almost finished, or that doesn't have to be it. It could be maybe you have, you're halfway through and that's when you feel done. It really depends on every person and every meal. But those steps that I gave you on this previous slide, which is checking in with your body. And those steps is, how do I feel right now? Yes, exactly. So maybe setting a timer. It could be, I'm going to check in and see what this feels like. It might feel really odd in the beginning to do that. But just notice, because sometimes we're doing 10 things at once. We're scrolling on our phones. We're, listening to our kids scream. We're doing, 10 things at a time. And then before you know it, realize we finished our plate and we didn't even really feel satisfied, or we didn't recognize it, or we're really full. So slowing down, doing some deep breaths can be really helpful as well.
Okay, great. Now, I did want to ask about dopamine. You talked about having a dopamine menu of activities that could stimulate you,
Mhm.
because a lot of people did say that they're using food for stimulation when work is boring, or like yesterday rained all day long, right? And your energy is just down. Are there, is there like a menu of healthy, like not sugar based foods that can help to stimulate our dopamine, like go tos when we know that we're using food for this purpose, but we feel driven?
Yes. Yeah. And so again, you can include some of the fun foods. I would say combine it with some of the other foods. So, like I mentioned before, with the crunchy, salty, bubbly, things that kind of satisfy that chewing that we like to have. That sort of is what increases the satisfaction. So, if you like crunchy things, if you like salty things, if you want to chew on something, you can use like chewery. It's called. It's like chew toys even. um, Things like, carrots, or it could be really crunchy crackers. It could be, sugar free gum. It could be, anything that really increases your satisfaction that you enjoy the taste of. And you can have that along with the sort of fun foods, maybe something sugary along with it. So that because if you think, I can't have this food, I'm not supposed to have sugar, it might create that restriction around it. And so I want you to think, maybe I can have a little bit of this, but I know I have to pair it with something else so that I can feel full and not continue to eat it for a longer period of time. And it does take some practice, but absolutely can be done.